Should a free-to-play player invest vertically or horizontally? This is a topic I see popping up over and over again, so I thought I would share my view on this as a free-to-play player who does not struggle much with endgame content. I've only played 2 gacha games seriously. The first one is Genshin, and the second one is HSR. I'll start with my approach to Genshin because I apply a similar playstyle in Star Rail. If you guys don't play Genshin, you can skip to the Star Rail section, but I'm sure this section will make sense to you regardless. So I always start with horizontal investment until I have at least 2 to 3 teams that provide decent coverage. When I pull a DPS unit, I usually go for C0R1, which means 1 copy of the character and then a 5-star weapon. And then for supports, I usually go for a C0 character and then a 4-star weapon. And then once I have 3 ready to use teams, I then start looking into vertical investment. However, that doesn't mean dumping everything into my favorite DPS unit because DPS units are usually restricted to their specific teams. Instead, I look for a powerful and flexible support character that can improve all of my favorite DPS units. So a character that even if I decide to switch my DPS in the future, I can still make my new team feel powerful. So in the case of Genshin, the only limited 5-star that I have constellations for is my C6 Farina. And that's because my C6 Farina can slot into any one of my teams and improve them massively. If I want to play Ito, I can run Ito, Shilonin, Yelan, Farina, and he'll pop the hell off. If I want to play National, I'll play Shangling, Farina, Kazuha Bennett. If I want to play Quick Bloom, I'll use Chlorinde, Fischl, Farina, Nahida, and so on and so on. Basically, any team I want to play, if I slot in a C6 Farina, she's going to take them to the next level. And so I want to set up a strong foundation of units first so that I can build a variety of teams. And then from that strong foundation, I can then start vertically investing into a supportive pillar that I can then use to take all my teams to the next level. So think of it as if your first few characters you pull for are kind of like your base foundation of your home. And then your vertically invested supports are like the pillars that support the next floor for your characters to rise and rise and rise. And so with someone like a C6 Farina, she's an extra fat pillar because she can make my whole account feel strong, regardless of who I want to use on that team. So in essence, for effective vertical investment, you first need to pick enough characters to start building teams around. So 2 to 3 competent teams. And then you need to find a character that can effectively slot into any of the teams you want to play and raise them to the next level. And then if those characters' constellations are game changing, then you could start investing into that character instead of your specific DPS units. This way, even if the current endgame rotation doesn't work for a certain DPS, your super supports can just slot into a different team and carry that other team on their backs. So in Star Rail terms, for example, would be Robin E1. And this is especially OP because it's just an E1 Robin rather than like a C6 Farina. E1 Robin works for pretty much any character, regardless of what DPS you want to run. If you put them with an E1 Robin, she will take them to the next level. So for example, on my account, some of the DPSs I pulled for at the beginning were Azila, Blade, Jingyuan, and Acheron. And pretty much all of those characters, bar Acheron, can make effective use of Robin E1. Even Acheron could use Robin E1, but she just doesn't use her as well as the other characters. And so Robin E1 is as close to a super support vertical investment pillar as it gets in Star Rail. She can pretty much elevate any of my teams to the next level, and it's just so much more efficient because it's better than me investing, for example, into Blade E1 or Jingyuan E1 or Azila E2 or even Acheron E2. Because let's say I get Blade E1, for example, but then I want to use a Azila or Jingyuan team, my E1 Blade will do nothing for my other teams. But if I invest in an E1 Robin, and then suddenly I don't feel like playing Blade, but I want to play Jingyuan, well, I could just bust out my E1 Robin and make Jingyuan feel super strong. And so that's why when I hear talk about vertical investment, I want to make sure people understand that when I mention vertical investment, it doesn't mean eidolons on your DPS units, it means eidolons on your super supports that work for all of your DPS units. In my opinion, this is the correct way to vertically invest your account. You start by horizontally laying out a solid foundation with a few DPS units of different elemental typing, and then you look into super supports like Robin E1, which can elevate every team you decide to use her in. Now in Star Rail, I haven't really done an E6 character like I did in Genshin, and that's partly because I haven't actually had like a year to save up, but also because, for example, like characters like Robin are such an outlier because their E1 is just so busted OP. But I also have eidolons in 2 other characters, where in Genshin I basically only have C6 Farina and everyone else is C0. In Star Rail, I have two other characters at E1. I have Ranmei E1 and I have Jade E1. And both of those are also kind of supports that work in many different teams. I do want to eventually go for an E6 character, it's just there hasn't really been a game-changing E6 support. I think the closest one that comes to it is E6 Robin, but that turns her more into a DPS than making her a super support, and so it's a fun idea in concept, but it's not kind of like the support I want to go for. And then E6 Ranmei is just kind of trash, to be honest. So for now in Star Rail, my super supports are kind of just E1 Ranmei, E1 Robin, E1 Jade, and I'm kind of happy with that for now, but I definitely do want to start saving for a potential E6 of a super broken support character, and maybe one of them is going to come in version 3, who knows. Regardless though, right now I have E1 Robin for one side and then E1 Ranmei for the other side, and so I kind of don't really struggle too much with endgame content because I have a very powerful support for two different teams. And so I feel very confident in my current situation where I don't really struggle too much with endgame content, and that's even without even activating my E1 Robin. So I have E1 Robin, but I'm currently still using her at E0. And so vertical investment can work very well for free-to-play players if you invest into an account-wide pillar support character. Basically, I'm telling you to invest into a support pillar for your house. If instead you invest into a single roof shingle, then don't be surprised when that roof shingle falls off.